Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 7:35 on the East Coast and 4:35 on the West Coast. The Atlantic hurricane season starting Sunday, that is June 1st, and all day we're going to have extensive coverage of preparations as we always track those named storms that pose any kind of threat to the U.S. Our coverage starts at 8 a.m. Eastern time right here on Live Now from Fox, and it will continue all throughout the day. I want to discuss more about the predictions, what we are thinking for this hurricane season as a whole as far as the Atlantic goes. Jamie Rome is the Deputy Director of the National Hurricane Center, joining us now live to discuss just that. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. And the first question here, the big one, what are we expecting for this Atlantic hurricane season?
Well, the official NOAA predictions are for the season are slightly above average from what we would traditionally see from a climatological perspective. But what that prediction doesn't tell you is where the storms may form or who they may impact. So for all coastal residents, we really have to assume that we could be threatened individually, and so we have to take the necessary precautions just like we do every season.
And I do have to ask, because we talk about this each and every season, how is this one comparing to maybe some of the previous seasons that we've seen recently?
Well, it's a little too early in the season to know. That's sort of like, determining if you like a book or a movie after reading, maybe only the first page or so. And so far, there's nothing that has materialized in the season that is, out of the ordinary or unusual. So we really have to let the season play out before we can sort of compare it to other seasons.
Don't judge a book by its cover, they always say. So what are the key climate factors that influence this year's forecast overall?
Well, one of the bigger ones is, and you've seen this for the last several seasons, the Atlantic and Caribbean and Gulf have been running sort of warm, meaning the ocean temperatures are a bit warmer than usual. And if that persists through the heart of the season, then it's obviously going to be an active year. There are other factors at play too, such as the presence of ENSO or El Nino or La Nina in the Pacific. And then, there's probably all told 5 to 10 things that sort of drive the overall seasonal activity. We tend to focus on the sea surface temperatures in the presence of El Nino or La Nina, but there are probably 5 to 10 other factors that go into it.
A lot of people are watching this right now. We are just starting the Atlantic hurricane season, so folks aren't necessarily thinking about it just yet if they live maybe along a coastal city there on the Gulf or just on the Atlantic Ocean itself. What sort of preparations can folks be making now as we start the season?
Well, I'm just going to tell you straight up. I've already prepared my house for hurricane season. I've already pulled out and tested generators, looked at my supplies, replenished some of my supplies. If your garage is like my garage, things seem to disappear or walk off. So you want to go through and make sure you have everything, and not only have it, but have it where you can get to it easily. So, make sure everything is in one location versus sort of scattered throughout the house. Check those batteries, make sure everything's topped off. And, the one thing we're really stressing this hurricane season is, as a society, we've become more and more reliant on power, right? So, and power loss is becoming what used to be an inconvenience during a storm. For some individuals, it's becoming life-threatening. So if you're one of those individuals, medically sensitive, or you rely on power for various reasons, you need to really think about how you're going to either evacuate from a power loss area or be able to safely generate power in the event that commercial power is disrupted.
What are some of the areas, when we look along the coast, we always talk about Florida and Texas, but what areas are maybe more prone to seeing a named storm? Is there a specific location, or is it kind of all along the coast?
It really is all along the coast, and and that's why the seasonal forecast is kind of tricky. While it tells you the overall activity throughout the entire basin, it doesn't tell you where a storm may form. So an individual living in Houston versus an individual living in New York, we can't say with certainty whether those two areas are more or less at risk in this type of scenario. So in both cases, both cities have to go ahead and get prepared for hurricane season.
Are there any new tools or anything of that nature that you all are using to help with these predictions, maybe this year or in recent years versus years past?
Yeah, so we're continuing the trend of de-emphasizing the cone and instead focusing more on the hazards. You saw that last year with the experimental cone that included the inland wind risk on top of it. This year we're adding a rip current viewer. For those that didn't know, storm surge fatalities have gone down so much over the last several years that rip currents now outnumber storm surge in terms of fatalities. So in an effort to sort of try to bring those fatalities down from rip currents, we're going to have a dedicated rip current risk viewer on our website.
All right, Jamie Rome there, Deputy Director of the National Hurricane Center, joining us live to discuss all of this as we do pay very close attention there to this Atlantic hurricane season. Anything else you want to add that you want to make sure people know before I let you go?
Yeah, I'd like to stress that people shouldn't focus too much on the Saffir-Simpson scale. People tend to fixate on that single number. And while that number does tell you the overall wind strength, it doesn't tell you where those winds are going to occur, and it doesn't tell you anything about the other hazards.
All right, Jamie Rome, thank you again for taking the time to be here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.